Hello and welcome to Lawsense. My name is Chanza Sikazwe. I want to start by thanking all of you that reacted and responded to our last edition of Lawsense. We got a wonderful response, and I just want to appreciate all of you that also liked and followed our social media platforms. We're so happy and excited to have you on board. My name is Chanza Sikazwe, and I'm from Chanza Sikazwe Advocates, where legal practitioners, commissioners for oaths, and notaries. Part two of Lawsense. I want us to deal with the issue of the matter of the family of Edgar Lungu and the government of the Republic of Zambia. We had talked about what happened in the High Court in Pretoria. I want us now to deal with what took place in the Supreme Court of Appeal. And so in so doing, I want to remind you that the High Court decided in favor of the government of the Republic of Zambia, indicating that the government should repatriate the body and conduct the state funeral. The family was not happy with this and so appealed to the Supreme Court of Appeal. And during the hearing of the Supreme Court of Appeal, a number of things came up. So representing the family was Advocate Tembeka Kaitobi, Tembeka Kaitobi. He was representing the Lungu family. Representing the government of the Republic of Zambia was Advocate Ben Stoop. And so I'm going to proceed by looking at what I deem to be the summary for the family's arguments, which came through Advocate Tembeka Kaitobi. Number one, the High Court was wrong in concluding that the government of the Republic of Zambia had established a clear right to the body of the late President Edgar Lungu. The government's premise was based on alleged agreement and contract or stroke contract between the government of the Republic of Zambia and the family. Apart from that, the erroneous basis was also from the former President's Benefits Act of 1993, which is a Zambian legislation. The late President Edgar Lungu did not want the government of the Republic of Zambia, or indeed President Hakainde Hichilema, to have anything to do with his funeral, and that was said or submitted to have been said to Dr. Sishua during an interview that Dr. Sishua conducted with the late Edgar Lungu. The widow, Madam Esther Lungu, and the family do not want to have President Hakainde Hichilema to play any role in the funeral arrangements as regards the burial of the late Edgar Lungu. The High Court of Pretoria did not conduct a proper constitutional analysis, which would have found that the family should have decided what was going to happen to the body of the late President Lungu in terms of the constitutional rights to dignity, right to family life, and right to equality. And these rights are enshrined in the South African Constitution. 5. That the former President's Benefits Act 1993, this is a Zambian law, does not give the right to the government of the Republic of Zambia to the corpse of the late Edgar Lungu. The major dispute in this matter was the role that President Hakainde Hichilema should have during the funeral of the late President Edgar Chagwa Lungu. Remember, these are the submissions that were made by Advocate Tembeka Kaitobi before the Supreme Court of Appeal. The program that was published was not an agreement stroke contract. Government of the Republic of Zambia inserted the role of the president during the funeral without the family's approval and consent. So, in Advocate Tembeka's view, this case is about the autonomy of the widow to decide how her late husband will be buried. Government of the Republic of Zambia does not have the right to override the wishes of the widow. In South Africa, it is illegal, it is prohibited to contract over a corpse, so it cannot be proper for a contract to be made over a corpse. That was, in brief, what was submitted by the family through Advocate Tembeka Kaitobi. Notice how I'm trying to really pronounce this name as well as I can. I'm really trying to do what I can. Help me here. So the Supreme Court of Appeal had comments and questions. I want to summarize those comments and questions as it relates to the family's submissions through their lawyer, Tembeka Kaitobi. Number one, Mr. Lungu was stripped of his benefits as a consequence of him engaging in active politics. The government of the Republic of Zambia withdrew all his benefits. Two, although he was stripped of his benefits due to his participation in active politics, he was not stripped of his title as a former head of state. Three, government of the Republic of Zambia is relying on the Kaunda judgment, which is the judgment relating to Kaweche Kaunda, who had applied for leave for judicial review in order to review the decision, for the court to review the decision of the government through the Secretary of the Cabinet then to bury President Kaunda at Embassy Park. So Kaweche Kaunda applied to court, and the High Court, through Judge W. Muma, decided that President Kaunda was supposed to be buried at Embassy Park, and therefore leave to grant leave for judicial review was not granted by Judge Muma then. So the government is relying on the Kaunda judgment for the customs, practices, and protocols of burying a national figure such as the former head of state. Four, foreign law issue. Foreign law issue, that is what law applies between South African law or Zambian law. It's a question of fact. The Attorney General of Zambia is an expert, but not an expert witness, because he is a party to the proceedings promoting the interests of the government of the Republic of Zambia, and therefore there were some comments that it was not possible to rely on his version of what Zambian law was. 5. The Kaunda judgment was different in substance and facts because it involved late President Kaunda, who did not have his benefits suspended or withdrawn, or neither was he engaged in active politics at the time of his death. All right, so those were the submissions of the family through their lawyer, Advocate Tembeka Kaitobi. Now, the government also made its response to these arguments through its advocate, Mr. Ben Stoop. And the arguments are as follows. 1, government of the Republic of Zambia's right to decide how to bury the late President Lungu comes from, number 1, rights grounded in the customs, protocols, traditions, and practice in Zambia, where all former presidents that have passed away have been buried at Embassy Park. 2, these rights flow from the agreement/contract made between the government of the Republic of Zambia and the Lungu family, as confirmed by Mr. Makebi Zulu, the spokesperson for the family, and Secretary to the Cabinet, Mr. Patrick Kangwa, in their joint press briefing in South Africa. 2, courts are now called upon to balance the rights of heirs and surviving spouses and determine what is reasonable under the circumstances when it comes to burying an individual. 3, courts should apply the principle of Ubuntu to balance the rights, fairness, balance of convenience with regards to the status of the persons involved, the person of national importance and significance, such as former head of state, the late President Edgar Lungu. 4, agreements/contracts entered into between the government of the Republic of Zambia and the family in South Africa was voluntary and binding on either party. 5, the High Court looked at the connecting factors which made Zambian law more connected to the parties. and therefore Zambian law should apply. 6. The family agreement did not refuse President Hakainde Hichilema from attending the funeral. So in summary, those were the arguments, submissions by the government of the Republic of Zambia through their lawyer, Mr. Ben Stoop. Now, let us look at some of the comments from the Supreme Court of Appeal and some of the questions raised after the government submitted through its lawyer. Number 1, are you abandoning the arguments based on the former President's Benefits Act of 1993, the Zambian law? Advocate Stoop answered that the government of the Republic of Zambia's rights are not founded on the former President's Benefits Act, but it was referred to for the context. So in effect, this ground was abandoned. 2, customs plus contract stroke agreement was the basis upon which the government's right to determine the burial of the late president are based. 3, Kaunda the Kaunda case was not on all fours with the present appeal case of former President ECL. 4, where is the evidence of customary Zambian law on burials of former heads of state? 5, can a party that gives another authority to bury withdraw that authority subsequently? There was no provision. This is Advocate Ben Stoop's submission to that. There was no provision for withdrawing the authority to bury in the agreement that was made. 6, the Supreme Court of Appeal was concerned about the enforceability of the judgment in the event that a judgment was granted. Was it going to be possible to enforce it? Would the parties be able to enforce it in Zambia? So that, in summary, is what went on in the Supreme Court of Appeal as captured by myself. The Supreme Court of Appeal reserved its decision, and so we are currently waiting for the decision that is going to come from the Supreme Court of Appeal. Of course, it's a decision that has a number of implications for us and for future generations as a precedence for what is happening. And so the question is, what is it that you're thinking? What do you think about this? What is your view? How do you think the Supreme Court of Appeal would finally resolve this issue? And what is going to happen in your view? What is your response to the arguments by Advocate Ngugai Toby and Advocate Ben Stoop? What do you think about how they handled it? Let's have a chat. And I hope we will be able to exchange some more Lawsense. My name is Chanza Sikazwe. Until we have another edition of Lawsense, it's bye for now.